we're going to focus on lifespan development. So, developmental psychology is the field of study that focuses on studying human behavior and mental processes beginning from the conception up until the death and dying during your old age. So, understanding the behavior and mental process, which is the psychology that is age appropriate through different stages um, and in a very systematic way, is what developmental psychology is about. There are processes which here are the kind of changes that takes place in humans within each period of development. So you see that prenatal, beginning from that to up until the death, there are various stages in which we progress, and each of these stages have different processes that happen. One is the physical or the biological, the cognitive or the intellectual, or the social emotional, which is social and emotional kind of process. So we're going to look at some aspects of these developments and these processes across these stages. Let's begin by looking at the prenatal. So the conception, implantation, then as an embryo, and then as a fetus, there are different stages through which the whole process of our birth, where it results in birth, there is a process that happens. I would love for you to watch this video. This is a TED Talk. If you would click on this link, it would take you to a video where a mathematician explains different processes that happen within a mother's womb from the time the implantation occurs after intercourse. Within 24 hours, they show you with a graphic image of various sets of instructions put together, and you can hear how a mathematician talks about how amazing and marvelous our creation is without any flaw, and how the algorithm that puts different sets of instruction together to work in such a coherent fashion. The way that he explains it is amazing. So I would love for you to watch that and kind of like talk about it. Maybe in the comment section, comment on how was that as you watched the video. What were some thoughts and some learning that took place? So we look at, he would end it with some kind of brain imaging that shows how just two sets of overlapping of the muscles just become a brain of a grown adult, and just the progress in which that happens. The imaging gives you a much clearer idea. And we're going to focus on how we develop through different stages using Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. So this is a theory that Erikson actually proposed after his work, after Freud gave his theory on psychosexual, which was more of, sexual nature, the psychosexual theory. Erikson proposed an 8-stage model that focused on different stages of development, something positive that occurs in that stage, and if there is a crisis where the need is not met, he explains how there is a negative response, and then he also gives a particular virtue in each of the stage that we develop. So let's go through each of these stages. As I'm going through the stages to explain a little bit about the processes that happen within the stage, I will talk to you about what Erikson proposed. Right? Let's begin by looking at these different stages. By starting with stage 1. The stage 1 is when the child is born to up until the first year. The child is totally dependent on the caregivers for their needs to be met. The child starts to develop trust and creates this level of trust helps the child. There are research done in that where the child is able to be more curious, be more sociable as the child develops and grows as an adult and becomes a popular person if they're able to have good trust. All right. But if that is not the case, if the needs are not met, the child develops mistrust. And the virtue that results in the first stage is called hope. So Erickson kind of mentions how these processes occur and how there is a desire, a feeling of confidence and a desire to be satisfied and the trust that we build as a child. So think about it. When you have different types of motor development that takes place in such an orderly and on average you can expect that certain type of behavior the child would manifest in a particular stage. As they progress through their 1 year or about 1.5 years, you will see that they grow and they exhibit a certain, they hit on certain milestones. So this is when psychologists come to play. When the child, as a parent, you see that the child doesn't reach the milestone, there is a need for intervention, and that's where the psychologists come in, or a physical therapist or a speech therapist would come in. So the stage that leads on to go to infancy is where the child gets from the second stage, from first year to up until 3 years. The child tends to, senses that there is a need to be independent, to be autonomous, has a choice. But if that is not provided to the child starts to have self-doubt and starts to have a feeling of shame while dealing with others. The strength that Erickson says that we develop in the second stage is will, the freedom of choice, where you have a desire to be able to meet the demands of the society. Here, I want to stress on the cognitive development that happens, which Jean Piaget, one of the earlier theorists in educational area of development, proposed how cognitively kids develop over the stages. I would urge you to click on this link here and watch an experiment that demonstrates this progress in their cognition, sensory motor, what kind of object permanence is the you can look at this object permanence. There's a separation anxiety that happens in the sensory motor stage. As a child develops, they become more egocentric, some kind of level of logical thinking. And then you will see in that example from the video, when the child is asked in this particular stage to transfer the liquid from one jar to the other, which is more lean, when it's or tall, the child is not able to say that it's the same amount of water, although it's poured into different kinds or shapes of bottle. But the child in the concrete operational stage is able to find it, and therefore there's much more increase in cognition as the child becomes an adolescent towards adulthood. So I would love for you to watch it and also comment on that in the comment section. So as you listen to the Piaget's theory and his experiment, I want you to understand one concept called schema. Schema is very important to understanding how our cognitive development occurs, because we very early in our life we form a set of patterns that sets in our brain as templates. So what happens is the template sets in our brain, and when new information comes in, it either becomes concrete or it actually changes its shape to accommodate that new information. So the process that involves is either called assimilation or accommodation. We will come back to this when we talk about cognitive distortions and so, while we're talking about psychological disorders, but this is an important thing for us to keep in mind. Well, and we do have initiative and guilt, which is the third stage, ages between 3 to 5. The child wants to take initiative in the activities. If that's not provided, the child develops to have guilt and the virtue that results in this stage. But successful transition is the purpose. There is a sense of purpose in wanting to pursue the goals in life and so on. And attachment is one of the areas that I wanted to focus on, because there is so much of need for us to understand why we behave a certain way and how our adult life is so much to do with how what we experienced as a child. So learn about this some more. Click on this link here. You'll be able to see different styles of attachments that we have with our caregivers as we grow up in our early childhood experience. And as a result of these styles, how is that we develop our own style from our parents? How do we develop that attachment with others? Be it our intimate partners or be it as a parent to our children. What kind of style do we have? What kind of personality do we develop? So I would love for you to take this link, click on this. This will take you to the test of where you can find out what kind of attachment style you have. This will be an eye-opening experience. Even if you click on these links, you'll be able to hear Dan Siegel talk about how mirror neurons help in understanding attachment styles, and how can you change your wiring in your brain to change your attachment style, even if you have had a negative experience as a child with your parents, and or a trauma with your parent, during your childhood, or your needs were not met, or your parents were in and out of your life, and you were in and out of foster care, or very difficult childhood that you have repressed memories and emotions that are not stable. Whatever that situation might be, you can see how you behave and how you develop and attach and form relationships with others as an adult. And therefore, if there is a need to intervene and change, what is the possibility to do that? So I would love for you to go through these resources and then write about it in the comment section and in your notes as well. So the fourth stage Erikson mentions is industriousness, where the child learns the ability to take a task and complete it. That gives a sense of completion, a satisfaction, and that skill that results from it is competence. But if that is not happening, the child experiences inferiority and inadequacy. Leading on to the fifth, which is more towards adolescent phase, where you develop a sense of identity. This is where you're neither a child nor an adult, but this phase is where puberty happens and there's so much of hormone changes, but also very vital in terms of you developing your identity. If that is not happening, there's a role confusion. And just knowing that fidelity is a byproduct of this particular type, you know that if you have to develop a positive kind of social interaction with others and relationships, interpersonal relationships, this stage is very vital. And knowing, this is an interesting study. I do want you to look at this. And, if you are a teenager, that, you always want to be sleeping. And there is a reason why that is so. The hormones that happen, that actually are generated and work, are so much active while you're sleeping. So that in some ways makes it easy to understand why during puberty, people always want to be sleeping. All right, the stage 6, this is where you become an adult. You are wanting to pursue intimate relationship, and you want to be productive in the kind of work you do. But if that is not the case, if you're not able to find, if you're 35 and beyond and you don't have an intimate relationship, or you're married, you're not dating, that's probably where Erikson says that you have social isolation. And the virtue that develops where you are able to have a shared identity, form that close relationship resulting in love. And the stage 7, when you are a middle-aged person, you have what's called generativity. This is a very important concept because this is a feeling of leaving a legacy behind. This is very important. You will see this in a lot of our middle age. It could be your parents or your grandparents. They have a sense of wanting to leave something meaningful to the society. So the byproduct is care. You will see that between men and women there are a lot of different changes. And the final stage, as old age comes in, there is a feeling of wanting to pursue integrity as you look back over your life. When that's not the case, there's despair, there's wisdom as a result of it. So just knowing that as you grow older, there is so much there is a need inherent to be happy and to pursue that. So I would encourage you to take a few moments, write your own story, look at who you are, what makes you who you are.